What was once a cornfield now sits a sprawling campus known as Redemption Christian Church. In small town rural southern Indiana 23 years ago, an upstart church began with a handful of people, and God has grown it to an impactful church of more than 2,000 with campuses in 3 towns. How did this happen? What did God use to not just make a church grow, but create a movement of Christ followers who are brought into the mission of loving God, loving people, and changing the world? This is the Redemption Story, a series of programs in association with Redemption Christian Church and the Kevin R. Smith Company that attempts to tell a bit of the story of what God has done and is doing at and through Redemption Christian Church.
Well, Dale, one of the things that when people think of church and they think of church family, whether it's Redemption or other churches around the world and country, it's the heart for caring, and those opportunities where churches bring into their communities to provide that support, that caring aspect. It's no different with Redemption.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's probably when one of our strongest suits, not that we have it perfect, there's plenty of things we can improve on that, is that care factor for one another, that being there for one another. All through the book of Acts, when you read it, there's all these one another passages, we call them. There's encourage one another, love one another, forgive one another, carry one another's burdens, and there's just all these different one another passages in the New Testament, book of Acts, and Paul's letters, the epistles as well. You have these one another, and really, I think we had a message recently where we talked about how I believe it's LG said, they will know we are Christians by our love. And one of the things that we leave out is that one of the things that actually is said in Scripture is that we'll know we're Christians by the way we love one another. Not just the way we love the world. That's important, really important. But also the world sees how we take care of each other. And that is the way they know, hey, you know what? I need that. I want to be a part of that. And you and I were talking before the cameras started rolling how that's a real problem in Western culture, American society, where we're so independent. We almost fiercely fight against that, and yet that's the way God wired us to be. And so at Redemption, we try, a part of our DNA is that one another, that togetherness. And so some of the aspects that we do that is through our community groups. And we've talked a lot about community groups on this podcast because we feel that it's so important, so vital. I was sitting in our starting point class, and somebody said, you need to have some more services. I get done with Sunday morning. I just want more. Can't you have a Sunday night, a Wednesday night, and all those things? And I get it, and I understand that, and we've talked about doing some different nights of worship. But I loved that somebody chimed up in that group, somebody else that was taking starting point, and said, hey, you need to consider a community group, or what, Rooted. She said, we did Rooted, and we found that extra feeling by doing that. Like, it has filled all those needs for us in our lives. Her husband and her in those Rooted groups. And I thought, wow, that's really cool. She's actually doing a commercial for Rooted right in the middle of the starting point that we didn't plan. It was just natural. And so the point being is that, like, sometimes people say, well, that church just didn't care. I mean, no lie. There's a lady who was angry because she didn't feel like that the staff was there for her during a hard time, and we didn't even know about it. Those kind of things happen. Now that's not very often. I don't get those complaints very often, but they happen. And sometimes it's because we drop the ball. But a lot of times it's like we didn't know. But if you're in a community group with somebody and you're going through something, they're going to know about it. And so community groups really is the way we care for each other. But there's other things, like if you're not in a community group, or maybe you are, but you just want to go into this deeper level of experiencing the one another and relationship with God and the church and each other. Rooted, I mentioned it already, but we're starting another round in September. September 15th, I believe, is the kickoff for Rooted. You can sign up for that. And it's just a great 10-week experience. You don't got to commit your whole life away here. Commit to 10 weeks where you go through this, and it's so good. It's daily readings coupled with some prayers that you read or you write yourself, and then you get together with a group and talk about it each week. And then there's some experiences built in, a great thing. We also have care groups here. Groups of people that just are built to care for one another. And I'm thinking of, we have some women's Bible studies and stuff which do that really well, but also I'm thinking about Celebrate Recovery. Every Thursday evening at this Jasper campus, there's a group of people that meet with something called Celebrate Recovery. Celebrate Recovery is really designed to be a faith-based step program to get you through any hurts, any hang-ups, any habits that you may have. It's not just for addictions. Obviously, it comes in very valuable when you're fighting those habits. Can be everything from worry to substance to pornography. But then there's hurts. Like I've been wounded by somebody, and going through this Celebrate Recovery process helps me with those wounds and hang-ups. Like I'm just really having a hard time getting over this anxiety. And so there's people that meet together that also struggle with those anxiety. And so it starts at 6:30 every Thursday night, and a couple of those Thursday nights a month you get fed. If you show up early, we have some of our groups and people from the church that cook for them. And it's really just a cool thing. So there's those aspects. We are getting ready to launch something called Grief Share. And everybody that has given testimonial to me that have been through Grief Share talk about how, listen, grieving is such a terrible thing. The loss of someone. A lot of people who've went through Grief Share have lost a child, a grandchild, a spouse. They've lost someone, but it doesn't have to be through death. It could be any kind of loss and hurt and grief that you're going through. And so you walk through this 13-week process together, and that's starting up in September as well here at Redemption. And so there's all those kind of things where we say, you know what, we don't just want to say we care for one another. We want to find ways to care for one another. Now, if you're going to do that well, you've got to put yourself out there a little bit. There's got to be some vulnerability. And that means being willing to go to a group. That means outside of the group setting, being willing to reach out and text someone. You hadn't seen somebody for a while. Hey, let's text them, check in on them, see how they're going, those kind of things. So caring for each other.
Darryl, you talked about the caring aspect and how sometimes in the Western civilization, United States, independence, we take great pride in that, right? I mean, the United States was founded on, the independence victory that we had in the 1700s. But loneliness and being independent can tie together in many different ways. And we were talking again before we started recording this message. In 2 Timothy, we get the last words that Paul wrote. He was in prison, and one of the message aspects that we can take away a lot is how Paul utilized his time. Mm-hmm. He refused in that isolation piece just to be in isolation. Mm-hmm. And when you talk about being vulnerable, I'm sure there's individuals out there that recognize that these programs would help them.
Yeah.
But the loneliness is holding them back. And wrapping mind around just using their time, and maybe while being lonely, coming to those meetings, coming to meet individuals and taking part could be a way to take a first step.
Yeah, it really could. And once you do it, it's like there's all these apprehension about it. But once you take those steps, then those walls come down. But it's amazing to me. I've discovered that so many times those of us who know that and tell that to others have a difficulty with ourselves. I just had a conversation recently with a guy who's helped so many people. I mean, just so many people. If you just know the amount of people he's pastored, ministered to, walked through it, addictions with, and yet he was going through some stuff himself and just didn't want to reach out and didn't and so those are the kind of things it's weird that we are that wired to where like we know the need and I can tell Kevin his need, but then me self-acceptance. So I think it ultimately comes down to letting down our pride a little bit and understanding that we are all hurting. We're all in need. Every one of us has needs. So don't be so fiercely independent or prideful about it. Just get some help. Get involved with people. And you know what else? You may be going there for you, but who knows who you're going to help there. The help that you could give somebody else is amazing. So, by the way, if you are thinking about Celebrate Recovery, or Grief Share or anything like that, but Celebrate Recovery, and you're like, I can't walk into a place by myself, call me. I will go to the meeting with you. I will go there. I got other people that would be willing to go with you. Don't put off going. We want to walk with you through these kind of things. We're here for one another. That's the whole point. Iron sharpens iron. You know, we got to build each other up.
Well, I appreciate that. And look, same offer. I would be more than willing to help anyone in that regard and in that aspect. So when you think about one of the things to keep in mind too, that we tend to lose sight of, I think, and you know, you and I have talked a bit about my inferiority battles through life, but God never stops loving us. Whether we're lonely, whether we're hurting, He never gives up that love for each of us.
That's right. He's there all the time. And we're never truly alone when He's with us, right? Now, that doesn't mean we can just forego and ignore other people, but it does mean He's with us every step of the way. Jesus says, "Come unto me, all you are weary and heavy burden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke up on you." And the whole yoke is, they would put this binding thing, the oxen, so they could pull and work together. And Jesus says, "Listen, my yoke is light. Put it on you, and we'll do this together." So it's amazing how that works.
And you've mentioned specifically some of the programs. We've talked a bit about Rooted previously and how that got started. Celebrate Recovery, the grief aspect of programs. Come and give a little backdrop of what's led to those programs and why now.
Yeah, well, what happened? Celebrate Recovery actually just celebrated 10 years at this church. It's been a program that Rick Warren's church started years ago out in Saddleback Church in California. And we had a couple who had been through some battles in their life, and they had attended a Celebrate Recovery, maybe down towards Evansville somewhere. I can't remember where they went, and they were going, and they said, we need something like this in our community. And so they came and said, "Hey, do we want to look at starting this?" And so what they did is they spent 6 to 8 months going through this themselves with just a handful of other people before they launched it here. So it was a lot of work, but there's so many needs. Because let's just use addictions. It's not the only thing that Celebrate Recovery is for, but let's just use addictions. AA and NA, Narcotics Anonymous, alcohol, they're great tools, absolutely awesome tools. But they, by nature, need to approach it from a little more generic standpoint. They'll talk about higher power and all that. The guy that started Alcoholics Anonymous, totally Christian based, but for rightful reasons, it's a little less denominational, so to speak. But Celebrate Recovery is the place that says, you know what, we recognize there's a need for that, but there's also a need where we need to go dive headlong into our Christian faith. It's by Christ's power we can do this anyway. And so you're basically walking through some similar approaches, but with the power of Christ truly out there, first and foremost, with worship attached to it. I mean, what a powerful weapon against Satan is worship. And they worship together. They pray together. So really cool. And so that's just one of the things, that's how it got started. Rooted really got started here because I had some friends. One of the things that you're always, when you're in growing churches, you're like, we can never disciple people enough. Like, what can we use? What can we use? What can we use? And I just had a friend who had been through Rooted at his church, and every conference we'd go to, he'd talk about Rooted. And I finally thought, let's take a look at this thing. And we decided to give it a shot. Our elders and staff did it first. I don't think I'd ever seen a more powerful tool, discipleship tool, in my 30 years of ministry as what Rooted has been. So those are the kind of, you see a need, you hear of a need, someone tells you of a program that can maybe meet that need. Grief Share, Richard Crabtree and I have been talking about doing that for years. Richard's real familiar with it, had been through that with losing his daughter, battle with cancer, and so he was trying to get that started years ago. He's even done versions of it. And so when I started talking with Paul Alvey, our counseling pastor, about it, and we got in contact with some people who had been through it, and we decided, you know what, it's time to get that here. It's been kind of a 2 year in the make, maybe longer process to get that there. And we've offered other things down through the years. There's a thing called divorce care, and we haven't offered it recently, but it's people who have went through divorce and they're battling that and trying to heal from that. And so it walks them through that. We offer regularly something called Save One, which is a care group for people who've been affected by abortions. Maybe they had the abortion, maybe their spouse or their girlfriend or whatever had the abortion, and there's a lot of hurt and guilt, and they don't tell you about those things in the choice side of the world. They don't tell you the hurt that comes along with that. And so what it does, it just walks you through how to forgive yourself, how to accept God's forgiveness, how to walk in that, how to take that step forward. So we just want to offer as many things as possible. It's not about filling up a church calendar, because we don't, any of us need to fill up our calendar. It's about offering whatever resources and tools we can to care for one another and to heal and to grow in our walk with Christ.
And all those programs come from God, basically. That's what's being represented, and all those programs work to meet the individuals where they are in that setting.
Yes.
While it's uncomfortable, there will be some pain, some hurt, but it's all about God and the individuals who take part in those programs.
Yeah, absolutely. And that brings me to maybe a great way to wrap up this session, is that we do offer, we don't need to advertise for this, they're full all the time, but we do offer Christian counseling. And we'll even refer on to other places if we can't meet those needs. But I'm telling you what, in our world, mental health stress is at an all-time high. Anxiety is at an all-time high. And so we want to walk with people through those things and help them out the best we can.
God bless you, brother. Appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you.